The NFL is back and it is week 1, which means fantasy football is officially started, and we have a ton to go through because there are starts and sits. There's a ton of question marks. There's a ton of things to just go over. So here I'm going to go through some of the best start and sit decisions that you can make this week based on opportunity, matchup, and just overall upside. Now, of course, I'm not going to get into the obvious starts like CeeDee Lamb and Ja'Marr Chase. Just start those guys. Anyone who you drafted to start, you're going to want to start them. Here are some of the guys who may be on the fringe side who you're not sure if you really should start, but they'll fit into that flex spot for this week. And some of these guys who also you maybe don't want to start this week based on matchup and opportunity. Now, the first guys I'm going to go through are the quarterbacks. So I'm going to start with the starts, and then at number 1 we have Drake May. He's going against the Raiders in New England. Now, last year the Raiders allowed over 20 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and Drake May, with his rushing upside, should easily be able to hit 20 points per game. I believe that his ceiling is very high this week, and his floor is also not that bad, so I wouldn't be scared to start him by any means. Not to mention the Patriots are also favored in this game by 3.5 points at home, and it's a game that is projected to be a one-score game and could even end up being a shootout, which is just great for fantasy. The over-under is a little bit lower at 43.5, but it is still a game that I'm definitely going to want to have my pieces in. Going to want to start guys like Genty and going to want to start Stephon Diggs. Overall, this is a game that I do want to have a piece in because I believe it could be a shootout, and Drake May is set to have a awesome week 1. Not to mention, he's got 2 pass-catching running backs, so even if they do end up going up and need to run the ball, I'm not scared because I believe that he could still have passing volume in the form of checkdowns and things like the screen game, so I believe that he could be very good even with those running backs running the ball. The second quarterback you're going to want to start is Kyler Murray, who's playing in New Orleans versus the Saints. Now, this has the exact same over-under at 43.5, and the Cardinals are also favored by 3.5 in this game. Now, I expect Kyler Murray to absolutely smash his over-under on his rushing yards, which is currently set at 25.5 rushing yards, which is pretty crazy. I mean, last year he started the year off with 57, 59, and 45 rushing yards per game through the first 3 games, and that is wildly over 25.5 points. I expect him to definitely go over that rushing yards, which will help his fantasy points a ton. Now, I also expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to be utilized a lot more. I'm hoping that he has that year 2 leap, and this is going to be when we really start to see it because the Saints is a great matchup to kind of test that chemistry. Going over to the sits for quarterback, the number 1 guy I have sitting right now is CJ Stroud at the Rams. Now, this is a away game against a very good pass rush, while the Texans have a horrible O-line. Not to mention the Texans also have losses to the receiving core with Diggs being gone, so those slot targets are not going to be as easy to actually throw for CJ Stroud when he's under pressure. The Rams are also the favorite in this game, which means the Texans are likely to be scoring less than the Rams, and I don't think that CJ Stroud is going to have a ton of upside with that O-line and with his lack of actual scrambling ability. I think that he's going to be in the pocket doing a lot of just trying to make any play happen. And the number 2 guy that I'm sitting this week at quarterback is Cam Ward, which has an absolutely brutal matchup for his debut against the Broncos. Now, of course, we know this is a horrible matchup. The Broncos secondary is very good. In fact, their entire defense is just stacked. This is one of the best defenses in the entire league, and they're going against a rookie quarterback who doesn't have a great receiving core, so this is not a great option for week 1. I expect a very slow start from Cam Ward and the Titans, and I don't expect them to be like some surreal team this year. I do think Elke Manor is a sleeper guy still. I have a video on him on my channel if you want to go check that out. But for this week 1, Cam Ward is a must avoid for me, and I would definitely sit him. Now let's hop into the running backs, and to start us off, I have Chuba Hubbard, who is going against the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars' run stopping is not the best, which means it is a great outlook for Chuba in this game. And this is also our first look at an offense that has been ascending and looking to make a big jump heading into this year with Bryce Young hopefully looking better, and of course with T-Mac as well, who I may or may not be talking about later in this video. Now, his over-under for carries right now is at 14.5, in every single game last year except for one where he had over 15 carries. He was a top 10 running back on that week. So if he does end up hitting his over and has at least 15 carries, which he definitely could go into the 20 range, he will definitely be a top starting option. And the second guy you're going to want to start is Omarion Hampton in his rookie debut going against the Chiefs. Now, I will admit this isn't the best matchup for Omarion, but he does get the start over Najee, which shows that the Chargers have a lot of trust in what he can do, and I believe that he should be pretty solid in this game. This should also be a shootout game with hopefully it being very close, and I'm really hoping there's lots of scoring in this game because that would be great for Hampton and just for both sides, and that's just what we want from fantasy. Now the over-under is at 44.5 points and is looking to be an even match, which means that maybe there isn't a ton of scoring, but even if there's not, there should be a lot of offense of them going back and forth. And of course, we know the Chargers scheme, they love to run the ball. I expect Hampton to get off to a hot start, especially with no teams having any tape on him in the NFL. And staying on the rookie train, we're going to go and take a look at TreVeyon Henderson, who's going against the Raiders as well. Of course, we talked about Drake May earlier going against the Raiders, and kind of for the same reasons I like TreVeyon Henderson in this game. He has, of course, that pass catching upside, which we talked about. Not a lot of teams have tape on him. He has explosive plays that I'm very excited to watch, and he reportedly looks very NFL ready, and he just wants to prove it for week 1 in a favorable matchup where they're favored to win. Just start TreVeyon Henderson. I don't think you're going to regret it. He has a reasonable floor as well, so he's definitely not going to disappoint with like a donut or something. And for the sits, I have another Texan, which is Nick Chubb. He's going against the Rams like we talked about. He's just not very exciting. I know some guys have been trying to hype him up, but he's looked slow, and it should be mostly a passing offense with them being down, as well as this is just a horrible O-line, which I talked about before. So Nick Chubb, his ceiling is very capped unless he actually just goes ham and has a bunch of touchdowns, but I don't expect them to be at the goal line a ton, so don't expect Nick Chubb to be very good this week. And the next guy I have is Javonte Williams against the Eagles. I think this one is a little bit obvious. It's a very tough matchup, and the Cowboys passing attack is really their bread and butter, and the rushing is projected to be very low in this game. I mean, at least from the Cowboys, we all know Saquon will probably go off. I think that most scoring in this game will come from the passing game though, especially for the Cowboys, so Javonte, his upside is not looking that great, especially if he's not used in the red zone. I do think they'll try to establish the run, but how successful will they be? I have no idea. I will also be avoiding Tyrone Tracy, who is going against the Commanders this week in a tough matchup with really an unknown offense with the Giants. His rushing total is set at 58.5, so he needs to score to be fantasy relevant, and last year against Washington, he only had 7.9 points. I expect a very similar result to that, something that's not going to break your week, but it'll definitely not make your week, and he's not an exciting guy to have playing on your team this week. Now let's hop into the wide receivers, and the first guy that you're going to want to start for wide receivers is Jerry Jeudy, who's going against the Bengals. Now the Bengals defense is horrible, which we all know, so this means that Jerry Jeudy has a ton of opportunity in this first game, especially with Joe Flacco being the one who's actually throwing the ball. There should be a lot more passing volume, and this run game, we're not really sure about it because, you know, all the weird tension with Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson to see the starter. We have absolutely no idea how much Jerome Ford's going to be involved, so I think that there will be a lot of passing in this game. And the Bengals typically have very slow starts to their season. Last year they lost to the Patriots in week 1, so I could see the Browns even having a sneaky win here if Joe Flacco is able to make it click, and Jerry Jeudy is going to be a large part of if they can actually do that. So I expect him to have a great week 1, and he's the guy that I'm definitely going to want to start this week. The second guy you're going to want to start, I mentioned earlier, and that is Teteroa McMillan against the Jaguars. He's the clear number 1 for this Panthers team in a game that should be reasonably close, and he's also a huge red zone target with his big frame, so that is definitely a big positive to have. I can definitely see him coming down with a touchdown. In an over-under that is set at 45.5 points in this game, it is one that you're going to want to have a piece at, and Teteroa McMillan is the piece that I'm definitely going to want to have in this game, as well as Brian Thomas Jr., but that one is obvious. I love BTJ. He's a dog. Now the Panthers are 3.5-point underdogs, which means this should be a faster paced offense, and there should be a lot more passing throughout the game, so Teteroa McMillan is definitely a guy who you're going to want to target and start in week 1. Now the next guy is another rookie. I mean, we love talking about rookies here. That's why we're called the Rookie Rager. So the next guy is Emeka Egbuka, who's going against the Falcons. Now with injuries to the receivers and in this divisional game, Egbuka should have very early on opportunity with an over-under of 47.5 points in this game. You definitely want anybody in the receiving game. This is a projected shootout, which means there's a ton of scoring and a lot of passing volume, and Egbuka should be one of the guys who will benefit a ton from this. And not to mention, Evan should take a lot of the heat off of Egbuka, and with no tape on him either, since he's a rookie in the NFL, I expect a week 1 boom week for Egbuka, and I really hope that he does hit, because it'll just make our fantasy football lives significantly better. Now the next guy is starting tonight, and that is George Pickens, who is against the Eagles in what should be a tough matchup, but there should be a lot of scoring in this season opener. And with CD to take the heat off of Pickens and allowing that deep ball to actually materialize and the big plays, I expect Pickens to at least have one big play, which should give him a decent floor and a very high ceiling. Now with practically no running game, the Cowboys actually need Pickens to win this game, and with an over-under of 46.5, I expect Pickens to be utilized, especially with his debut in the Cowboys uniform. I'm looking forward to watching this one materialize. And the last receiver that is a must start this week is Ricky Pearsall going against the Seahawks. Now it is his time to shine with Jauan Jennings recovering from an injury. He should be playing and he just got the extension, yes, but I'm not actually worried about that at all. I think that Ricky Pearsall will have his time to shine, especially with Ayuk being out. Now they are also favored in this one in a shootout, which means a lot of offense. I really hope Ricky can continue what he did in that last game and just absolutely blow the top off of defenses. And in this week 1 matchup, it is going to be very exciting to see. And now for our sits at the wide receiver position, these guys aren't ones that you necessarily were going to start anyways, but if you were even thinking about it, I wouldn't start them. The first guy is Michael Pittman, who's going against the Dolphins, and he doesn't have a ton of exciting opportunity in this game. He has to share the target volume with Downs and with Warren, and it's coming from Daniel Jones, so I mean, how exciting can it really be? He really needs a touchdown to be very relevant in this game, and I'm just not going to bank on Michael Pittman getting a touchdown in this game. If you want to do that, be my guest. I don't think he's the worst start in like a deep league if you have 3 flexes or something, but personally, I do not want to start him. The next guy is Rashid Shaheed versus the Cardinals, which I actually like Shaheed this year. I mentioned him in an earlier video, but in this game, I think that it could be a rough start. With Spencer Rattler at the helm throwing the ball versus a very good Cardinals defense, I expect the dump offs and slot work to go to Kamara and Olave, so I don't think Shaheed has a ton of opportunity. Now, Shaheed is a big play guy, which we know, and he needs those big plays to really, be good for fantasy football. And with a start like this versus the Cardinals in this matchup, I don't think that those big plays are going to be there. Like I said earlier, I think it'll just mostly be dump offs. We'll see what Rattler can do. I could be wrong here, but I think that benching Shaheed this week is just the move. And now going into our tight end position, here are the guys that you must start at tight end. The first one is David Njoku for the same reason as Jerry Jones going against the Bengals. I can't believe I just said Jerry Jones. I, of course, meant Jerry Jeudy. Now, for the same reasons as Jeudy, David Njoku, I think, could be very good this game, and we have seen what he's able to do with Flacco. That chemistry with Flacco is absolutely beautiful. It is what we want for fantasy football, so David Njoku is a must start at tight end for week 1. The second guy I'm starting might be a little bit controversial based on my Michael Pittman take, but that is Tyler Warren versus the Dolphins. Now, simply, I think that his upside is there. He could also have a very low downside, but I do think that if you're going to take any guy in this game, either be Josh Downs or Tyler Warren. Now, it is a projected shootout with the Colts actually being favored by 1.5 points, which is pretty surprising, but they are at home, so it kind of makes sense. Now, the Dolphins can't really scheme against Warren, which is why I think that he will be good in this first game and why I'm willing to take the shot. Especially at tight end, you don't really need to start the safest guy every single week, so I think Tyler Warren is a good shot at some good points that you could have. It's a great opportunity for Warren to start the season off hot, so that is why I'm willing to take this shot. Do I think that he necessarily will be a guaranteed boom? No, but take a shot on him. I think it's worth it. Now I'm going to be moving into the sits at the tight end position, and I have another rookie. The first rookie I have on the sit list, which is Colston Loveland versus the Vikings. Now I'm not actually really low on Loveland this year. I actually do like him, but rookie tight ends do typically start slow, and I know that's a little bit weird after saying Tyler Warren in the last one, but for an offense with so many mouths to feed, with Odunze, with Moore, with Burden, and then of course you have Swift even in the receiving game, I think that Loveland could have a slow start versus the Vikings. Now he does have week over week upside, and he could get some points in this game, but he could also be a guy who gets 2 receptions for 20 yards, and that's just not what you really want to start. Getting 4 points from your tight end position is not anything exciting at all. His over-under projections are also lower, so it's not like Vegas thinks he's going to go off in this first game, so I'm going to actually lean on that side of things and say that you should probably sit Loveland this week if you have a better option at tight end. And next is Kyle Pitts versus the Buccaneers, who I'm going to want to sit this week. Now, this one might be a little controversial because last year he did go off against the Buccaneers, but Tampa Bay has actually been very good versus tight ends, except for when they play Kyle Pitts. But looking at Vegas odds, he is currently set at 3.5 receptions and is over-under for 39.5 yards, which means he would have an 8-point game even if he hit the over, and that's just not something that I'm really wanting to start. He basically needs a touchdown in this game to give you anything that's exciting, or he needs to go absolutely nuclear like he has in the past. But I think that for the fantasy point of things, if you have a better option than Kyle Pitts, I would definitely go start him. I wouldn't start him over a guy like, I don't know, Trey McBride or something crazy like that. Definitely don't do that. I would start Njoku over him if you have Njoku or Kyle Pitts. And just if you do have a better option, start that one. But if your best option is Kyle Pitts, go ahead and start him. I don't think he's the worst start, but at tight end, I'm looking to pivot for some better upside, and I think that guys like Njoku, who could go off with Flacco, are better starts there. So that is all I got for you for my starts and sits for week 1. Make sure you comment any questions you got down below, and I'll be sure to answer them. As well as make sure you subscribe and come back every single week, because we're going to have fantasy content dropping every week, and you're going to want to be here. Peace.